And this is, I think, my first real trailer build that I did when I was much younger, much earlier on in my career. And here's how it's held up. Overall, quite well. The design seems to be very solid. They added some conduit to it to protect these lights. Also, when I built this, I didn't really know much about, you know, trailer axle sizes or whatever. Probably would have gone up a size on tires. I actually don't know if those are even standard size tires, but you know, whatever the case, live and learn. And like I said, this is my first real trailer project. This has two half tailgates. They swing out in the middle there with a cage built to protect the lights. Evidently it's all held up really well. And so I mean, other than maybe some wire protecting and some larger tires, just from talking to them, I don't think there's really all that much else I would have done. You know, no broken welds, no things coming apart as they're using it. Seems like it's held up pretty well. Might have used another kind of paint, you know, but whatever, it's just the way it works out. Random, I don't know, 4 or 5, whatever it's been, year update. We are notching together some of this angle, and it's fairly simple to figure out exactly what needs to be notched and what doesn't. It seems kind of intimidating and hard to follow, but you got to keep in mind that you basically just need a flat surface across each of the narrow parts of this frame for your boards to rest on. We used lumber because it gets stored inside. The other option is, of course, to use diamond tread steel or like expanded metal mesh. But for whatever reason, my mom, I guess, decided she wanted lumber, or I decided we were going to use lumber, and it's held up pretty well because it stays out of the weather. Now, the issue with this, really one of, I think, the only problems I actually ever had on this build is that when I laid out this frame, you know how I just said there has to be a flat surface on the top of this thing on both ends? Well, on one end there wasn't. I put the angle iron on upside down, so I had to like take that and figure out exactly what to do with it. But you know, that's problem solving. There's pretty much anything you do there's going to be problems with. It's really a lot of the time just more a matter of keeping your cool and working through things, and you just kind of have to expect things like this. Now, this is some rare footage of me like 4 years ago. I say jokingly, but it is kind of true, when I still had hair and a positive outlook on humanity. Let's see if we can get this fixed. I now have the cross members all nice and welded in place. I start looking at how these cross members sit, and that is with a flat surface on the top and the front and the back of the trailer because I notched them. They have a flat surface on the bottom, and that's kind of a problem. I thought of a couple possible solutions, the first of which was taking some 2-inch angle. I actually have quite a bit of that laying around the strap for some reason. It's left over from a project a little while ago, and going like such and kind of boxing in this angle. But the problem is, you know, if I put a board on top of that and run a bolt through it, it's not putting pressure on the board like it would be here because there's nothing underneath it. Because there's a top and the bottom that are metal, that's what the pressure would be put upon, and the bolt would probably eventually come loose. And I just didn't really like that idea. My next best idea was when I put the floor on this thing, just take like a 2-inch piece of wood and put it in here, because you know, wood compresses and it would just all squeeze together. But that seemed kind of hackish, and it just doesn't seem like a good idea. So basically, all I gotta do, yeah, look at this, I even welded this one. Pretty much all I have to do is cut it here. This is the only one I welded, luckily. Figures that's the one I happen to show on camera. But pretty much all I'm gonna do is hack it off here, turn this a 1/4 turn, and weld it in place. Yeah, it really wasn't that big of a deal. You know, putting together a trailer like this, a lot of the time, you don't really save hardly any money unless you really know how to shop around and you know, like, people who can get you a good deal on a new axle or whatever, if they're, you know, if they're wholesalers or whatever. However, the experience you gain is truly invaluable. This is, of course, not to be a beginner project, because if you don't really know what you're doing welding-wise and you weld something together and it comes apart, you know, the load on it going down the road and kill someone, that'd be really, really bad. However, if you do have enough experience to make the welds properly and ideally a little bit of an education behind you, even if it's not that crazy much of one, it is really, really, really the type of project where you learn so much. The lessons I learned on this build, you know, the things I took away from this, I've kept with me all these years, and I use them still fairly frequently on a lot of projects I'm working on now. Realistically, it's like I always say, you know, if that's the worst thing we do on this project, I guess I don't really have too much to complain about. So, moving into part 2 of the build, what I want to work on is getting that axle mounted and installed. and also the tongue. So for now, we're working on putting on these hangers and spring shackles, and I've got them laid out about where I want to be. You know, I measured from the front of the frame to the back of the frame, and I found out that 60% of that is 69 inches, which is right where I'm going to put the axle. So I guess pretty much all we have to do is put the hangers over, well, where the axle needs to go. Alright YouTube, so I got all 4 hangers welded in place, and so that brings us to the next part of the project, which is to correctly, you know, align the coupler for this thing. And basically the way we're going to do that is I'm going to take this trailer axle and set it up on the springs, kind of like a test fit, and then what I'm going to do is make sure that with the coupler out there, it'll be the same distance from a given point on that coupler to a point on this axle and the opposite point over here. It shouldn't matter what the difference is as long as it's the same going this way and going that way. So let's get it lined up. The first objective today is to take this thing out and flip it right side up. Alright, and now that this thing is fully assembled and brought back here in the garage where it's, you know, moderately warmer, the next thing we got to do is worry about putting some sides on it. Now, anybody who's ever seen a utility trailer knows about what the average sides are like. You know, they start about here, they come up a foot or so, maybe 18 inches, and run down the course of the entire trailer. And they're important for 2 reasons. A lot of people only think of the first reason, which is, you know, you need them because they give you something to maybe tie stuff down to, keep stuff from falling off the sides, even though it should be, you know, secured. But the other thing that sometimes people overlook, which is equally or more important, is they actually act like a brace. It's like a, I want to call it a gusset, but I don't think that's the right word. You know, you've got these 2 parallel pieces which would have to bend as opposed to just one piece of angle. And I'm pretty sure if I just come over here and step on this corner, I can probably get this to flex. Yeah, and you know, you put 1,000 pounds of crap on this and hit a pothole or something, and that could be an issue. So the upper rail, like I said, it's good for securing things, and it acts as a brace. And there's really nothing to it but to do it, so let's start cutting out some cross members. Yeah, basically, as you can see, these things are a little bit long and they're kind of sharp and pointy, so pretty much all I'm going to do is come in here with a cutoff wheel on an angle grinder, put a 45 on the outside, then cut it straight. And once I've gone all the way around the trailer, I'm going to come back around with a flap disc and smooth off these welds, maybe try to blend these corners a little bit. Mainly just clean it up a little and deal with this beautiful mess down here, the one on the other side. So let's get to it. And I know most utility trailers about this size you see have one of those big ramp things that that folds down, but I've done some thinking. I've talked to my mom about this and we don't actually want to do that. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is make a two-piece tailgate. Each half will swing out and they'll meet in the middle. So I guess first things first, we got to take some of our leftover angle and make a pair of 30 by 17 inch, well, rectangles, I guess. I finished up the back gates and I made some protective steel boxes for the LED lights so they don't get smashed up or nothing, as well as mounted the fenders. Well, YouTube, so I got one wheel on the side of this trailer. I got everything finger tight, and at that point I decided to go ahead and use my impact wrench to try and tighten down the bolts, and nothing happened. And I've been doing some troubleshooting. That's when I found out that the inside of this coupler is just totally full of ice, and so I got to deal with this. All the boards have been attached to each cross member all the way down the entire frame of this trailer. I feel like I probably could have skipped a couple of those cross members and been alright, but you know, I'd imagine tying it down to all of them does add a little bit more rigidity. So, yeah. Yeah, so I put in all 60 of those bolts, and took a little while, but I guess it wasn't the worst thing in the world. It is everything that I hoped it would be. It's a trailer that's low to the ground, so it can work with the low to the ground hitch on my mom's car. It can handle large, bulky, yet relatively lightweight loads, like the kind of things that that we're going to be hauling with it. It's solid. It is a lot heavier duty than anything you can buy. Now, back in the day, when I was still in high school, my first job, one of my duties there was to assemble the utility trailers. When the stores receive those trailers, they come on the back of a semi, and there's no wheels on them, and the tailgates are all folded down, and the tongue's off. The tongue's like zip tied to the bed, and so someone has to free the tongue and run the wires and put the tires on, and that's what I used to do. And in doing that, I got a very up close and personal look at every aspect of those things, and they're, to be honest, really sketchy. You know, for something that I don't know, there's probably some applications where really thin metal and horrendous welds would be okay, but for anything designed to be loaded with a ton of weight and taken down the road, probably not there. You know, I don't really like to, you know, down talk other people's work, but I never would have bought one of those things in a million years. And when my mom's like, I need a trailer, I should go buy one, I'm like, no, I'll just build you one. And so, well, long story short, here we are. So yeah, the utility trailer, my first ever utility trailer, and all of its awesomeness is pretty much done. Yeah, just a couple little odds and ends, and she's ready for the road.
Okay, so I don't really like watching this because looking back at those days, I was just unbelievably ridiculously positive, 110% naive about the ways of the world and every possible thing. So yeah, this is just cringe as can be. But whatever, I don't even care. I'm going to post it for you guys because some people, you know, who still like doing things, they might want to build a trailer or whatever. So, okay. Here's the deal. It is 2022 now. This main update that you're watching, I think I filmed in 2018 sometime, and the trailer itself I made in early 2014. I think this was like January of 2014 or something. Okay, so here's the deal. The trailer's held up great. They still have it. They still use it. They've used it for moving hay, moving building materials, all kinds of stuff. The axle was a complete scam. This was back in the days when I thought you could go to, you know, stores and places that sell things, and they'll actually kind of know what they have, and they'll make some attempt to give you worthwhile recommendations for what you need. Yeah, none of that happens. That's all a scam. Okay, so yeah, that was just the flimsiest piece of junk axle ever. They said it was the thing for the job. Totally got scammed, overpaid for it. Yeah, that's just how everything works. Okay, so fortunately, however, a couple years back, 2-3 years ago now, I had a buddy with a boat trailer that he kept the axle off of, and he said he was going to do something with it, and he never did. And he's like, hey, you want this thing? I'm tired of it taking up space. Yeah, sure, great, thanks, man. Okay, so I got a 3,500-pound axle for free, and so I took it, and we ended up putting it underneath this trailer, which increased its payload substantially from the just, you know, spaghetti noodle 2,000-pound axle or whatever piece of junk was. Okay, so for anyone watching this, don't buy anything smaller than a 3,500-pound axle. In spite of what people who claim to know what they're talking about tell you, that's the smallest common one. And yeah, and those are all, you know, for some things that are okay. This is made to be towed behind this little, you know, 4x4 unibody vehicle thing, so it's fine. If you're actually, you know, if you really want to build something to be sturdy and whatnot, you really got to find like a 7,000-pound axle or a 5,200-pound axle. But 3,500 pounds is the minimum, I would say, for anything worthwhile. And that's what we put under there. So it's under there now. It's holding up great. The finish that we applied to this thing also totally sucked. That undercoating stuff, yeah, that doesn't hold up at all. So yeah, it's all like rusty and stuff now, which sucks because, you know, anyway, it's just nothing's built properly. You can't just go to the store and buy functional stuff. So yeah, So what have we learned? Flimsy axles, don't waste your time. People who say they know what they're doing and they can recommend things usually can't, and undercoating sucks. So the lesson from this is use at least a 3,500-pound axle. If someone who's competent in welding to build something that goes on the road is going to build one of these, at least a 3,500-pound axle, and you got to get that oil-based enamel paint like what people use for implements and stuff. That's really the only way to go. But I mean, structurally, in terms of everything I actually built and whatnot, it's held up really well for them. There's no cracked welds, no failed anythings. I've put a lot of weight on this thing a bunch of times. It's been great. Can't say I really regret building it. And yeah, I mean, it held up pretty well. So anyway, this is about 8.5 years since I built this thing. And like I said, it's held up pretty well. So I would like to thank you guys for watching these over the years. And don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe all for more. Thank you.